You're listening to the Final Say Radio Show, a Rappaport Media production, with your host Brett Rappaport and co-host John Rappaport.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're moving right along, and we have our next guest, Curtis Ellis. Curtis, you've got an interesting story. First of all, welcome to the Final Say Radio Show. This is Brett and John Rappaport.
It's nice to be here. Thank you so much. And I tell you, it's a great lead-in. People are afraid of taxes, and
we're afraid of a lot of things.
They're afraid of a lot of things, and I'm going to give you something. I'm going to give you something else to be afraid of. It's called the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. Now that sounds even more boring than talking about the tax code, doesn't it? And it's by design. This Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement was mentioned in the State of the Union address by Mr. Obama. He said he wants to conclude this year. And he presented it as part of his great jobs creation plan. But what he did not mention about the Trans-Pacific Partnership is that it subverts the Constitution and it absolutely surrenders our sovereignty, American sovereignty, because it sets up transnational authorities. Now, Brett or John, one of you, Brett, you were talking about how the further away you get from your branch of government, if it's the local government, that's more accountable. It's harder to reach somebody at the federal level.
Right.
Well, this is going to set up international levels of government that'll be completely unaccountable to anybody. And that international government will get to rule on our tax code and on business and on regulatory law.
This is an issue that we've been discussing for many years, and it's been a concern of a lot of citizens for many years. As we've seen the power of the United Nations growing, other international organizations, whether it be in banking, business, whatever, but we're looking at the possibility of not international taxation, loss of sovereignty, not just for the United States, but every nation on many different levels. We have things that come before the Senate right now talking about taking care of our children for us.
That's right. That's right. The International Convention on Children and
our rights, our Second Amendment rights.
That's right. The Small Arms Treaty.
Small Arms Treaty. The where you could take your boat in the ocean treaty. You know, I mean,
that's right. This seems to be a fad among the elites of both parties. Of both parties, you find Republicans going along with this, and you find Democrats going along with it. I think they teach it at Harvard that it's a good thing to have a world government, to have global governance
and Yale
harmonization of our rules, so that when we do business in other countries, we're under the same rules as when we do business in this country, which sounds innocuous and sounds good. But they're being put in place not by treaties. They're being put in place by unelected bureaucrats sitting far away that don't answer to the voters in any way, shape, or form.
You know, it's extraordinary. It's caustic to business. Right, so I look at almost everything from the eyes of an entrepreneur.
Right.
I start businesses, I try to grow them, you try to sell them. That's how jobs are created. And one of the biggest challenges here is always raising money. Mm-hmm. Without capital, your ideas are nothing but something you discuss at a cocktail party.
Right.
And the problem here is it's already a fierce enough environment now that everything you do has international competition behind it.
Right.
So to then start applying rules and regulations where the governing bodies that may be responsible for your business success or failure are virtually outside of your physical reach as well as your financial reach to hire the professionals to help you to comprehend or deal with it, which means the number of new innovative companies has to be stifled. So who then gets to create the jobs, right, or to create the new technologies? The large companies with the deep pockets, the transnationals, who are the ones who can control the conversation.
That's exactly right. They put these rules in place to help the big boys, and it's another barrier to entry for small operators, and that's the way regulation has always worked. So who is, for example, this Trans-Pacific Partnership, and by the way, I should say you can learn more about it by going to notpp.us, notpp.us. This Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement is being negotiated in secret. Even members of Congress can't see it. But who can see it? The big transnational corporate lawyers who are sitting at the table to write the regulations, write the governing structure. And one other frightening thing, if I may just say so, you talk about business. This deal would exempt foreigners doing business, foreign firms doing business in the U.S. would be exempt from EPA and financial regulations, while American companies would still be strangled by these regulations.
And I wanted to address that with you. I was just about to bring it up, because when you look right now, even at like Al Gore's mission in life to, save the world through environmental nonsense, those treaties also exempt a lot of these countries, which, by the way, have, 4 or 5 times our population.
Isn't that interesting?
Use now more energy than we do.
Yeah.
Are the number 2 world economy, the manufacturing zone of the world, if you will. And so how are we supposed to compete as a nation when they don't even play by the right rules anyway? But This is one more that we're signing on to.
Exactly. It's shocking.
I've always been against conspiracy theories in general, right? And if for no other reason, because it's hard to get 3 people to efficiently cooperate in almost anything.
Right.
Right? But I do believe that institutions are almost corrupt by design, right? So it's almost like conspiracy by design, right? You have a system, just like for politicians to get elected nowadays, they have to raise so much money that it's almost impossible to not sell your soul and your sanctity.
Right.
So what this entire issue is taking what the visceral negative reaction most people have to Congress, and is almost doing that at the entire national level, giving up our sovereignty, giving up the voice and the value system of the American people. And I wanted to touch on a word you brought up. How do you get away with that? By keeping it a boring subject.
Right.
The politics of distraction. Who wants to read a 3,000-page bill? The guys who vote on it don't read it.
And, one of the chapters of this that deals with investment, see, this deal sets up these international tribunals that'll settle any disputes that you might have. An investor invests in this country, they have a dispute over some of our EPA regulations or something. It goes to one of these international tribunals. The chapter of this treaty that lays out the rules on that, reading that is so hard. I mean, it is beyond legalese. It is entirely opaque. And it makes it boring. When you talk about trade, economy, people say, I skipped those classes in college. I didn't take that.
Well, you touched on the cost impact on this. I spent 2 weekends ago, I was negotiating a small contract between 2 small technology companies, 15 pages, and I do a lot of my own contract work. And still, just reading, reviewing, and editing, I spent about 15 hours, 2 days straight, gave up an entire weekend and half a day on Monday before we felt comfortable passing it on to boards and advisors, etc. That's 15 pages. Like the cost burden, people don't realize how much time and energy goes into these things.
They don't realize that. That's exactly true. But when you talk about strangling business with regulations, that is not an exaggeration. It becomes very time-consuming. That's why it's so, to give foreign companies a competitive advantage by exempting them from regulations that American companies would be subject to is just stunning, absolutely stunning. I do recommend, we can stop this one, though. This is not just another horrible thing that, we can't do anything about, because Congress has to vote on this. It's not going to be passed as a treaty. It's going to be presented as simple trade legislation. But the first step is Congress actually has to surrender its constitutional power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and give that power to President Obama. That's the first vote that's going to happen this summer. So that's why we need to tell our members of Congress, don't give Obama more power.
I can't imagine the House doing that. I could see the Senate giving up everything.
But if the House doesn't, it's over. This whole thing is dead on arrival.
Is there a name on a particular bill that people should be tracking?
Well, that bill, it hasn't been introduced yet. It's going to be called Fast Track. Fast Track Trade Promotion Authority. How boring is that?
Scary by design, though.
Yeah. Fast Track. This is a fast track to perdition.
Gee, and Fast Track sounds like a good thing, doesn't it?
Right.
Hey, we're going to do something fast, but folks, DC fast, you don't want it.
No, you want it slow.
I always argued the best thing we could ever have are 2 parties always fighting at each other who never actually pass anything.
And this is exactly the opposite of that. Here we have John Boehner and Barack Obama together. And they're going to be selling this as, see, we can work together. We can actually get something done. That's the scariest thing.
One more time, can we have your website?
NoTPP.us. TPP stands for Trans-Pacific Partnership. No TPP.us. You can get the facts there, and there's a big red button you can push and send a message to your congressman or woman.
Great. Curtis Ellis, thank you so much for joining us
Thank
on the
you.
Final Say Radio Show.
Thank you. It's great talking with you.
Take care.
Pleasure meeting you.
Bye-bye.
As well.